The rain had just begun to fall when Sergeant James Whitmore stepped off the Greyhound bus. His boots hit the wet pavement with a heavy thud, his duffel slung over one shoulder, his uniform pressed and still smelling faintly of the desert heat left behind. After 14 months overseas, the silence of his small town felt almost eerie to calm, to still. The war had changed him. His eyes, once quick to laugh, now scanned the streets with a quiet sharpness. He wasn't the same man who had kissed his daughter goodbye at the kitchen doorway. He was someone else now. Someone hardened, but still hoping. Hoping that home hadn't changed as much as he had. He hadn't told anyone he was coming early, not even his little girl, Emily. She had just turned 6 while he was deployed. He'd sent her a card and a plush teddy bear from a market in Kabul. She'd sent back a video message, her voice high and full of giggles. "Come back soon, Daddy," she had said, hugging the bear. James had watched that clip every night. For weeks, the taxi dropped him at the corner of Sycamore and 5th. His house stood at the end of the street, modest and red-bricked, a swing dangling from the tree in the front yard. Everything looked the same, yet everything felt different. The porch light was on. There was a car in the driveway, an unfamiliar one. James squinted at it, a tan sedan with a dented bumper. He didn't recognize it. His heart beat a little faster, but he shook it off. Maybe a friend visiting. Maybe a neighbor. He climbed the front steps quietly. The door was shut but not locked. That wasn't like Sarah. His wife was careful about these things. He pushed the door open slowly, calling out, "Hello." His voice echoed faintly through the house. No answer. The living room was dimly lit. The TV was on but muted, showing some old cartoon rerun. A jacket he didn't recognize was slung over the back of the couch. Something about the whole scene made his chest tighten. He set his duffel down quietly, his instincts now fully alert. Then he heard it. A scream. A sharp, frightened cry that froze the blood in his veins. "Daddy, stop." No. It was Emily's voice, high-pitched, panicked, coming from the back room. James didn't think. He ran. His feet pounded the hardwood floor as he tore down the hallway, past the family photos and hand-drawn crayon art pinned to the walls. His hand found the door handle to her room, and he flung it open so hard it banged against the wall. Inside, he found her. Emily. She was standing near the bed, trembling, her small fists clenched at her sides. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, her breathing ragged. And standing over her too close, far too close, was a man James didn't recognize. The man froze. He looked maybe early 30s, wiry build, wearing jeans and a black t-shirt. Hands were up, palms open as if to say, "I wasn't doing anything." But James had seen that look before, in hostile territory. In alleyways where intentions were always hidden under calm faces. James didn't yell. He didn't lunge. He just stepped between Emily and the man, placing his body square in front of his daughter, eyes locked on the stranger. "Who the hell are you?" he said, voice low and trembling with fury. The man opened his mouth, but before he could speak, Sarah appeared in the hallway behind them. Her face went pale the moment she saw James. "You're home," she said softly, as if unsure he was real. James didn't move. He didn't take his eyes off the man. "You want to explain what this guy's doing in my daughter's room?" Sarah hesitated. "James, it's not what it looks like." "Then what is it?" Emily clutched James's sleeve from behind. Her fingers were cold. She didn't say anything, just leaned against him like she wanted to disappear. The man took a step back. "I wasn't hurting her, I swear." She spilled juice on the carpet, and I raised my voice. "That's it." James didn't believe him. Not for a second. Sarah stepped forward quickly. "James, please. This is Trevor. He's been helping out since you were gone." James turned slightly toward her, his voice cracking. "Helping out?" Sarah's eyes dropped. "I didn't know if you were coming back. James, you stopped writing for weeks. You didn't call. I was in Kandahar. We lost communications during a mission," James said. "And you let a stranger live here." "He's not a stranger," Sarah whispered. That one sentence hit James harder than any I'd ever had. He turned back to Trevor, who was now inching toward the hallway. "Don't," James said sharply. "Don't take another step." Trevor stopped. James knelt down beside Emily. "Are you hurt, baby?" She shook her head quickly, but her bottom lip trembled. "I was just scared," she whispered. James gently touched her cheek. "You're safe now." He stood up slowly, breathing through his nose, trying to stay calm. Every part of him was screaming. Not because he was back in danger, but because this was worse than war. It was betrayal, confusion, Fear, all wrapped up in the one place he thought was supposed to be safe. Sarah tried again. James, we need to talk. Not here, not like this. Please, just let me explain, then talk, James said. Right here, right now. Trevor looked at Sarah as if begging her to take control. She didn't. I met him at work, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. After your letters stopped, I thought. I thought maybe you weren't coming back. I was lonely. Emily needed stability. I didn't know what else to do. James stared at her. So you moved him in? No, Sarah said quickly. Not at first. He just came by to help with errands. Then, I don't know, it just happened. James couldn't speak. He didn't want to yell in front of Emily, but the betrayal was loud inside his chest. Trevor spoke up, his tone sharper now, maybe emboldened by Sarah's silence. Look man, I'm not trying to fight you. I'm not a bad guy. If you're gonna make this a scene, I'll just go. James took a deep breath. You should have gone the moment you heard her scream. I didn't hurt her, Trevor insisted. Ask her, but James already had. He turned to Emily again. Honey, did he ever touch you? Or yell at you like that before? Emily's eyes dropped to the floor. Then, after a moment, she nodded. Once. Sarah gasped. Emily. Trevor looked furious. That's not true. She's making that up. James stepped forward, something inside him boiling over. Get out. Now. Trevor hesitated. I have stuff in the guest room. I said get out. Trevor muttered something under his breath but walked past them. He didn't apologize. He didn't look back. James watched every move until the front door slammed shut. Silence fell again. Emily was still standing in her room, holding that teddy bear James had sent her. Her small fingers twisted around its arm like a lifeline. James scooped her into his arms. She didn't resist. Her little arms wrapped around his neck like she was afraid he'd disappear again. He held her tight, closing his eyes, feeling the weight of the last 14 months crash down on him, not in gunfire or explosions, but in this quiet house where love was supposed to live. I'm here, he whispered. I'm here now, and no one's ever going to scare you again. In the days that followed, James stayed in the house, sleeping on the couch, unsure what came next. Sarah kept her distance. She offered no more explanations, no apologies, just silence. Emily didn't ask about Trevor again, but she also didn't sleep alone. Every night, James sat by her bed until she fell asleep. Sometimes she clutched his hand. Sometimes she just stared at the ceiling in silence, as if trying to piece together whether this was all real or just a long dream. And every morning, James made her breakfast, pancakes, even when they turned out lopsided. Emily would smile just barely, but it was enough. Enough to keep him grounded, enough to make him believe that home could be rebuilt. But something still didn't sit right. The more time passed, the more James noticed little things: Emily flinching when the doorbell rang, her stiff posture when someone spoke loudly, her reluctance to be in her room alone. Then, one afternoon, while folding laundry, James found a small notebook stuffed behind the couch cushions. It was Emily's. He opened it gently. The pages were filled with scribbles, drawings of a house with the windows dark, a small figure standing alone in the rain, a big shadow standing behind her, and one sentence written over and over again, in uneven letters. Daddy, please come home. James felt his knees give way, and he sat down on the floor. He had come home, but maybe he was too late. And just as he closed the notebook and looked up, the front door creaked open. Not from Sarah, not from Emily, but from someone James hadn't seen before, and the look on their face said everything was about to change. The person standing at the front door was a woman, early 40s, with tired eyes and a windbreaker zipped all the way up. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and in her hand was a worn leather folder. James stood up slowly, Emily's notebook still in his hand. Can I help you? He asked, stepping closer, trying to keep his voice even. She gave a small nod, glancing behind him into the house. I'm sorry for the unannounced visit. My name is Marlene. I work with the county's Family Services Division. I was hoping to speak with you about Emily. James's back straightened. About what? Marlene held out the folder. There was an anonymous call made last week. A concern raised about emotional distress and possible neglect. I need to ask a few questions, if that's all right. James didn't answer immediately. His first instinct was to slam the door shut. But Emily was watching from the hallway, and something about Marlene's expression, calm but concerned, made him pause. Come in, he said quietly. They sat at the kitchen table. Emily stayed close, standing behind James, arms loosely wrapped around his shoulder. Marlene opened the folder, but didn't rush. I understand you just returned home recently. Military. James nodded. Afghanistan, 14 months. Just got back a few days ago. Marlene jotted something down. That's a long time. And I imagine hard to adjust. I'm not the one I'm worried about, James said. It's my daughter. Marlene glanced at Emily, then back at James. Can you tell me about the man who was here before? Trevor Morgan. James's jaw tightened. He was someone my wife let into the house while I was gone. He yelled at Emily. She was afraid of him. That's all I know. She didn't report it to anyone. She's 6, James said softly. She didn't even have the words for it. Marlene nodded slowly. We've had a few minor concerns pop up in the past, while you were away. Nothing that rose to the level of intervention. But now, seeing what I've seen, how jumpy she is, the way she stays close to I think she's been carrying a lot more than anyone realized. James exhaled, rubbing his hand over his face. I should have been here. No one blames you, Marlene said gently. But now that you are, we want to make sure she's safe, stable, and supported. Over the next hour, James shared what he could, how things had seemed fine when he left, how Sarah had started changing the way she wrote to him halfway through deployment, how letters stopped coming. He hadn't wanted to believe the worst, but now it was all unraveling. Emily colored quietly at the table beside them, not saying much, but always watching. When Marlene left, she left behind a business card and a promise. If anything changes, or you need help figuring out custody, therapy, or anything at all, call me. This isn't your burden to carry alone. James thanked her and closed the door. That night, he sat on the couch with Emily curled beside him, the television flickering quietly in the background. He wasn't sure if he could even sleep anymore. His mind wouldn't stop running circles. Sarah had taken Emily to her sister's house for a few nights. Not out of anger, but out of shame. James had asked her to, for space, for time to think. He didn't know what their marriage looked like anymore, or if it even existed. But right now, Emily needed one thing above all else, someone she could trust. The next morning, James made breakfast again, this time, with Emily sitting on the counter watching. Are you mad at Mummy? She asked. Out of nowhere. James froze, spatula in hand. No, he said gently. I'm just trying to figure out how to fix things. Did I do something wrong? She whispered. That question gutted him. No, he said, crouching to her eye level. You didn't do anything wrong, Emily. This isn't your fault. None of it. She blinked, then nodded, though James wasn't sure she believed it. Later that afternoon, while sorting through mail on the porch, James found something strange in the mailbox. A plain envelope, no return address. Just his name written in small slanted print. Inside was a photo. Emily, sitting in her room, clearly taken through the window. On the back, scribbled in blue ink, were 3 words. You don't know. James felt his blood go cold. He scanned the street. No one in sight. Just a soft hum of sprinklers in a nearby yard. He took the photo inside, shut all the windows, and checked every lock. Emily was in the living room, humming to herself and dressing up a doll. James didn't say anything to her, but his heart was thudding so loud he could barely hear her voice. He called Marlene, told her about the letter. She asked him to scan it, and said she'd look into it. It might be nothing, she said, but I'll notify a case investigator to follow up. But James couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching, that someone still was. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. The garbage bins turned over, items missing from the mailbox, footprints in the backyard after it rained. James checked his security cameras, nothing. Either the person knew how to avoid them, or he didn't want to think about the other option. Then came the second envelope. This time, it wasn't just a photo, it was a recording. James played it on an old MP3 player stuffed into the package. It was muffled, but clear enough. Emily's voice, crying, and another voicemail, angry, threatening. If you tell anyone, I'll take your bear and throw it in the fire. Got it? James had to pause it. His hand shook. He pressed play again. The voice didn't sound like Trevor. It sounded older. He showed the tape to Marlene. This time, she acted fast. We'll open an investigation immediately, she said. This confirms Emily's trauma goes deeper than we thought. But James didn't want to wait for a slow-moving system. He needed answers now. He went back to Sarah, calmly, but directly. Is there anything you haven't told me? She looked exhausted. Guilty. But there was something else there to fear. There was one weekend, she said, voice trembling, when I had to go to my sister's. Emily stayed with my mum. Your mum, she insisted. Said she missed her. I thought it'd be fine. James took a step back. Did Emily ever say anything afterward? She cried when she came home, Sarah whispered. But she wouldn't tell me why. James turned away. He couldn't breathe. He remembered Susan Whitmore, his mother. A woman whose sharp tongue could slice a man in half. She'd never liked Sarah. Thought James had softened. But would she hurt a child? He didn't want to believe it. But that night, he asked Emily, "Do you remember staying at Grandma's house?" He asked as they sat on the porch under a cloudy sky. She looked down. "I don't want to talk about it." James hesitated. "Did she ever scare you?" Emily didn't speak. She just nodded once. James leaned forward. "Emily, sweetheart. If anything happened, you can tell me you're safe now." Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. "She told me if I told, nobody would believe me. That Daddy would go away again." James reached out, his voice shaking. "I would never leave you, ever again." Emily finally looked up, and for the first time, James saw a new look in her eyes. Not just fear, but something closer to trust. He called Marlene, told her everything. She asked for Emily to come in for a full evaluation. A licensed child psychologist would be assigned. James agreed. But the fear didn't go away. That night, James heard the floor creak near the hallway. He checked. Nothing. Then came a knock at the back door, soft. Slow. He opened it, nobody there. But on the porch step was a teddy bear. Emily's bear, burned at the edges. James stared at it, his heart hammering. He picked it up gently and turned toward the dark yard. Somewhere, someone was watching. He knew now this wasn't just about mistakes or bad choices. It was about someone hiding in plain sight. Someone who wanted silence, and someone who had underestimated a father who had learned, too late, what silence could cost. He turned back inside and locked the door behind him. The storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. James barely slept that night. Every creak in the walls, every distant dog bark, made his nerves jump. He sat in the living room with a flashlight in one hand and Emily's scorched teddy bear in the other. The thought of someone creeping close enough to drop it at their back. It wasn't just terrifying. It was personal. By morning, he made up his mind. He wasn't waiting anymore. He called Marlene first, told her everything. The bear, the knock, the feeling that someone was watching them. She didn't hesitate. "I'll notify the police and request an emergency surveillance team. You don't have to go through this alone." The officers came quietly that afternoon. Plainclothes. They set up cameras around the property, small ones, discreet. One officer stayed parked 2 houses down in an unmarked sedan. James told Emily the truth in a way she could hold on to. "We're having friends help us keep the house safe. Nothing bad's going to happen, okay? Daddy's here. And this time, I'm not going anywhere." That night passed without anything. Strange. So did the next. But on the third night, just past midnight, one of the new cameras sent an alert. Movement. Backyard. A figure. James bolted out of bed, checked the feed. A tall person in a hood was near the back fence, crouched low, fumbling with something, maybe another note, maybe something worse. He didn't wait. He called the officer on stakeout. "He's here. Backyard." Within seconds, 2 officers moved in. The man didn't run. He just stood there when the flashlight hit his face. And when James saw who it was on the footage, he froze. It wasn't Trevor. It wasn't Susan. It was Richard, the neighbor from 2 doors down. The quiet man who always waved but never talked much. The one who offered James a broken lawnmower last month. He had seemed harmless. Turned out Richard had a history, a sealed record for stalking and harassment back in another state, tied to a custody dispute involving his ex-wife's family. He had seen James's family as an invitation, convinced himself Emily needed protecting from unfit people. The photos, the recordings, even the scorched teddy bear twisted gestures he believed were warnings or help. James felt sick. All the fear, all the questions, all of it had been the result of someone hiding in plain sight, disturbed enough to insert himself into a broken family's life. Richard was taken into custody that night. He didn't resist, didn't explain, just looked blank as they put him in the car. James stood in the cold, watching the taillights fade. And for the first time in weeks, he felt something close to relief. But the relief didn't come all at once. It came in small moments. The next morning, when Emily poured her own cereal and smiled. When Marlene came by with good news, Richard wouldn't be released. His previous record and current actions were enough to keep him behind bars for a long time. It came when Sarah came over and, without arguing, signed the final custody agreement James had filed days earlier. Full guardianship to him. She broke down quietly, admitting she had never meant for things to spiral the way they had. "I wasn't strong enough to speak up when I should have," she said. "But I'm glad you did." They didn't reconcile. There wasn't a reunion. But there was an understanding. For Emily's sake, they agreed to keep the peace. And sometimes, that's as much of a resolution as two broken people can offer. A few weeks later, James and Emily visited the park down the street. It was chilly, but she ran ahead toward the swings, wearing her favorite red hoodie and carrying a new teddy bear tucked under one arm. James sat on the bench, watching, just watching, a peaceful kind of watching. The kind that didn't come from fear anymore. Emily called out, "Daddy, push me." He stood and walked over. As he pushed her swing, she laughed, the kind of laugh that fills your chest with something warm. "You know," she said suddenly, "I had a bad dream last night. But then I remembered you were here. So I told the dream to go away." James smiled. "Did it listen?" She nodded. "Yeah, it left." That night, when they returned home, James placed one final item into a box labeled past. It was the burnt teddy bear, not thrown away, just tucked away. A reminder of what they'd made it through. Then he taped Emily's newest drawing to the fridge. It was their house again. Only this time, the sky above it was bright blue. The sun had a smiley face. And underneath, in big block letters, it said, "Safe now." James stood back, hands in his pockets, letting the silence fill the kitchen. This time, it didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a soldier coming home. It was about what he found, what he faced, and what he chose to do when he heard his daughter's scream. He didn't run. He didn't freeze. He listened. He stayed. And slowly, moment by moment, he helped her believe that home could be safe again. If you're still watching, maybe this story reminded you of something in your own life. Maybe it stirred questions. Maybe it gave you hope. Just know healing takes time. Safety isn't about locks on doors. It's about people who don't leave when things get hard. Thanks for staying until the end. And if today's been a heavy day, I hope tomorrow's lighter, because someone out there is listening. And the door, when you're ready, is always open.